Welcome to Game Retail Ramblings. I'm your host, Travis Severance, coming to you live from Millennium Game Studios in Rochester, New York. It's episode 40, allegedly. It's been a bit. So I think I've been off for about 2 months at this point, looking back at the old YouTube. So it was time to get out and have another episode. I've had a lot going on in terms of business life, personal life. I bought a new house a couple of weeks ago, so the moving into that has been a whole ton of work for me. I installed a new store manager into the other store that I manage in Minnesota called Game Center. Spending some time with her working through sort of the vision and what things should look like over at that store has taken up a good amount of time. I was also at the Alliance Open House out in Fort Wayne. Very good show. It was nice because I got to meet the Universal team. Universal had recently purchased Alliance Distribution through their bankruptcy and stuff. I didn't have a ton of relationships with them going into that show, aside from they are the Canadian distributor that handles Free RPG Day for us. So we've had a little bit of a relationship on the distribution side as far as logistics and that sort of stuff goes, but I never formally met the team and stuff. So I had a chance to meet with Angelo and a bunch of the other folks that are from the Canadian side of things. It seems like everything's going to go well. I don't have any concerns for Alliance. Alliance has always been a good distribution partner for us. The folks there seem very upbeat. It seems like it's going to be a really nice fit. They're sort of happy to all sort of be past this situation in a more positive way than it looks like. I mean, Diamond, every day on ICV2 or every couple of days on ICV2, they talk about the continuing lawsuit over there. It just looks like incinerating money to me in a legal way. So hopefully they end up getting through the other side of that. But all in all, I feel good about the Alliance Universal business in general. I'm confident that Universal is going to be able to come here and do a really good job stateside and things like that. So the opportunity for those folks at Alliance, I think, is a good one. And things could have been far, far worse given the situation that they're sort of dealing with. Today, once again, we're going to talk about TCGs. TCGs seem to be the straw that stirs the drink. There is certainly the highest amount of controversy between retail and publishing and distribution and mass market and that sort of thing. And it's a giant category that we deal with all the time. I'm going to talk a little bit today about Riftbound and Cookie Run and how those things are going. I want to talk about, once again, just have a basic economics conversation about supply and demand and allocations and that sort of thing, and then sort of wrap up some concerns about where the market could go heading into sort of the last quarter of the year and what that could look like based on some of the stuff that I'm seeing right now. To get into it, pricing pressure and customer backlash. Millennium and Game Center both sell their collectible products at market price. Now, there's not a specific dollar amount that says a market price collectible is going to cost this much. That number varies, but roughly most of the people in the industry use TCG Player as basically their baseline for market price when it comes to collectible products in the space. They carry the majority of the card games in the space. They have enough volume on their site to sort of set a baseline for that. You could use eBay as well. Amazon can sort of tell you what things are going on there. One of the reasons why we use market pricing is, aside from the fact that there's supply and demand, and I've talked about this before, people, when they're running their business, can decide to do whatever they want to do with regard to MSRP, market pricing, collectibles, and that sort of thing. If you take a look at either one of my stores, the majority of the one-star reviews that we get all have to do with collectible customers. Either they're upset because they thought they had $3,000 worth of Pokemon, and when they came in, lo and behold, they actually had less than that because they either don't understand what their cards are, or the demand and the supply that we have for those cards isn't where it is, or it's somebody that's upset because we're market pricing whatever the collectible product is that is above MSRP du jour. So it's been Gundam, it's been One Piece in the past, it's been Magic, it's been Pokemon. The list sort of goes on. It was Swoo for a period of time, Lorcana. Like we've gone down this road quite a bit. I mean, this will be I think my 23rd year in the business. And the reality of it is, when it comes to business in this industry and things like that, what I try to do as best I can is match up the needs of the customer with the needs of the business as best I can. And a lot of times there's issues with aligning those things. One of the things that happens on collectibles a lot is they just go through these cyclical cycles where the value is up and down all the time. After doing this for as long as I have, because we market price things, there's a number of collectible products that are in our store that are boxes of product that are well below the MSRP. And I'm still waiting for a customer to come up to the register ever and say to me, hey, you know, you're 20-25% below MSRP. I need to pay you a little bit more so that I can pay the MSRP cost of that box. It's disingenuous. It's not the way that I want to be able to run and manage my business. So when we do those sort of things, we go into the collectible space fully knowing that we're going to try to order product in a way that's going to meet the demands of what our local customers are. Occasionally we want some more because we do sell online from time to time as well, and we open singles. So going into the process of trying to decide how much product I'm going to order, there's a whole bunch of different factors that come into play. There's the local demand, and there's a bevy of different things that I have to consider there. So I have to consider, what am I going to sell in sealed boxes? What am I going to sell in packs? Is there an event space activation that I have to consider as well? So do I have to have prize packs? They have to come from the set for a period of time up until the next pre-release or the next set that comes out. How much am I going to open for singles? What do singles look like? Because I'm trying to meet the needs of all the different customers that I have. So I have some customers that want to buy sealed product. I have some customers that want to buy pack product. I have some customers that just want to play in the store for events. I have some customers that only want to buy singles. When it comes to dealing with collectible card games, your challenge is sort of trying to figure out what those buckets are going to look like. And there's all kinds of equations that end up coming into play when you start looking at that thing. If we take a look at singles and the average box opening for a box of singles is below what I'm potentially going to get out of that thing without hitting a lottery ticket, a lot of times it doesn't make sense for us to open that box of product, because of course it doesn't. If the box costs me $50 and I'm only going to open $30 of singles on average in that box, it's usually not the right choice for us to end up having those singles. Or we have to look at pricing our singles above market price and managing that in some way. But what happens is in a situation where supply is way outstripped by demand, as a retailer, I run into issues with getting product. So despite the fact that I have relationships with a number of distribution people and publishers as well, buying product, it's really, really hard on the products that have above MSRP pricing right now, that have higher than MSRP market price. We run into an issue where I can't get the supply that I need to be able to facilitate all those things. I need to give up on something, or I need to make some sort of an adjustment to carry for that set to be able to make the money that the business needs to in order to survive to get to the next set. And retail essentially is just survival. When I look at my allocation numbers and what I get from allocation, and it's 85% of what I ordered is hacked off the back, and I'm only getting 15% of what I ordered, something has to give for me to be able to continue to be successful and be in business. So whether I'm looking at that and saying, okay, we can't do sealed selling at all, we have to use something else for prizing for our events. Employees don't get any product. There's no singles that we can sell. There's hard decisions that have to be made over the course of that time. And a lot of that's wrapped around the fact that the market price is way outstripped what the demand is. And you have to make challenging business decisions based on the fact that the supply that I thought I was going to be able to have that's going to facilitate sales for that game for the next 90 days until the next set comes out just doesn't exist. So the choice is, I either sell that at market price or I sell that at MSRP. If I sell that at MSRP and I got 85% less than what I ordered, I'm at a deficit, because the dollar amount that I'm going to make on the 15% of what I was actually given versus the 100% of actually what I wanted is going to be significantly smaller, and it doesn't allow me to continue to operate the business here. So we market price, because the reality of it is, if I was an MSRP shop across the board, historically, so doing this for 23 years, there are sets that you just take baths on constantly. Well, if my business model is based around making sure that I'm making a certain amount of profit to continue to exist, then something has to give there. If I don't have enough supply, I need to be able to sell enough of it to be able to keep the lights on. And regardless of what some customers think or what some customers feel, the singular best thing that I can do as a business is to continue to exist. Right? So whether they're here and they're shopping from me because they're buying board games or role-playing games, or they're taking advantage of our events, or they're buying our singles, or whatever they happen to want to be able to do in the space, if I don't survive, none of it matters, right? And on top of that, between this organization and the other organization, I got about 60 people that I'm dealing with that are relying on me to make good business decisions to continue on in their livelihood. So it's an immense amount of pressure. The other thing that's happening is, as these games have gotten more and more popular, publishers have heard screaming from consumers about products being above MSRP. So what they've done is, in the past, what they would do is they would print more product to meet the demand of what the hobby needs. What they're doing more of now is they're actually diverting more of that product to other places, whether it's big box, whether it's Costco, whether it's Amazon, whether it's direct to consumer selling, in an attempt to kind of control that pricing. So they're trying to armor themselves up by saying, okay, you know what, we've pushed it into a bunch of these different channels, And the pricing that the consumer is going to see there is MSRP, except for it really isn't. Because what happens is I have flippers online that are calling me a scalper based on what my pricing is, which is hilarious to me because every video in the world shows the people that are at Target chasing around the MJ Holdings rep that are just grabbing every Pokemon thing off the shelf at that price, and they're going on Facebook Marketplace or they're going in other places and they're just flipping that product and selling it on their own as well. It's this giant tug of war. It's a situation that nobody wants to be in, but at the end of the day, the business decisions that I end up having to make have to do with the survival of the business and the continued survival of that business. And when you look at market pricing is that way, not only based on the fact that it's actually selling for that much, but the flipper community is a huge part of that as well. It's not just a bunch of people that want to sit around and enjoy themselves and have just a nice game and they want their collectible game to be not worth anything, because that's the other side of it. People want an affordable collectible game, but they also want their collectibles to be worth something. Well, those things are incongruent. It's either a collectible game and there's value to the cards because you're collecting the cards and they're hard to find, or it's just a card game that you play. That's fine if you want to spend money on collectible assets that don't have any kind of collectability of it or any kind of value to it, but it's a completely different game than what you're dealing with when you talk about how extensive and how crazy the market is right now. So it's a challenge on business owners constantly to try to get more and more product. We're in this survival mentality where we're trying to have as much as we can to sort of facilitate what we can locally. What we do oftentimes here is, rather than trying to price it at market, we price a little bit below market so that we can give the local community a little bit of a savings versus what they would find. And it doesn't really matter when we do that either, because we get slammed just as much, because the MSRP gang is in full effect coming out and saying, well, you're not an MSRP, so you're scalpers and you're this and you're that and the other thing. And the reality of it is, I get it. They want it one way and the reality is it's another way. Well, I also want it one way and it's another way. I want more product available. I want to be able to buy more of this stuff. I want to be able to I would be perfectly happy and content selling every single collectible product that I have at MSRP if the supply was exactly where it needed to be and the demand was exactly where it needed to be. But the reality is, at some point here, the bottom's going to fall out on all of this stuff or some of this stuff. You're going to see it all the time. It happens. I've been doing this long enough where Pokemon's going to take a nosedive. Gundam's going to get to a point where the set doesn't matter and it's going to start to flatten out. One Piece has started to do that already, right? The supply for One Piece is significantly higher and more available now than it used to be a year and a half ago. And part of that is, A, people have moved on to different games. B, they've started producing a little bit more because they're not producing things like Battle Spirits and Digimon's being combined, so they don't have as much time on the printers. And then the other thing too is there's a number of retailers and there's a number of players that have just left that game. It's gotten long in the tooth. It's going to deal with some challenges there. So now our supply on One Piece is better than it's been in the past, and lo and behold, what happens? Well, you look at the market price on that stuff and it's gotten a lot closer to MSRP, and in some cases they've overproduced some of that product and the market price is down below MSRP. Well, we're priced below MSRP when the market price is down as well. So when it comes to collectible products, we do our best to navigate it in that way. The other thing too is, I'm not going to price my stuff so that somebody else can come to my store and buy it to make their purchase of a collectibles a side hustle at my business. I pay a ton of money in order to have the staff, the rent, all of the stuff that goes into having this business the way that it is. And it's super, super expensive to do that. So it's not set up in a way where I want to make other small businesses out of the people that come in with their backpacks and try to flip the product as well. So what happens? If we get enough complaints, then trying to do it to make people happy isn't going to pay the rent. So when we get enough complaints, we just sell the stuff online, because online the marketplace is what the market is and nobody complains about it, and that's fine. And the reality of it is, right now there isn't a Pokemon set in the last year that I wouldn't let somebody walk into my store and I wouldn't buy it from them for full MSRP. So I'm constantly buying any Pokemon product that's in print for the last 12 months. I will buy it from you for MSRP. That's how difficult it is to find for supply. The other thing that's happening too that no customers are seeing in the background is distribution's also pricing up this stuff because they can't get enough of it either. So our costs are increasing 10 to 15%. On top of the fact that we're allocated, we're also paying more for the product than we've ever paid before in the past, or we're paying more for it for the second week of that supply. So it's a challenging and a frustrating environment to sort of be in. This idea that we're just these massive profiteers that are making just hundreds of millions of dollars on this stuff, when the reality of it is we were only getting this much of it. If we were getting this much of it and we were pricing it where we were pricing it, that would be a different conversation. But I'm getting 15% of what I'm trying to order, and we're trying to maximize the value on that so that we can survive to the next set. And it gets harder and harder and harder with the more products that are in the market that are doing that sort of thing. So I think I covered pricing and pressure and the reason why things are the way that they are. Now, that said, a lot of times I see people that will compare stores to stores. Now, when I say this, I'm being truthful. I don't care what any other store is doing. If they're doing something and it's working for them and they're pricing their stuff at MSRP and they're in business and they're happy and you want to support that store, then definitely have at it. Continue to do that. I think that's great. I'm trying to build a business where customers can support the store in the way that they want to, and I can provide the products with them that they also want to buy. If they weren't buying the things at the prices that I was selling them at, then I wouldn't continue to sell them at that. The same thing would happen. It's a supply and demand. It's very, very, very basic, simple economics. Those other stores that are out there doing it in a different way, that's great. All of us sort of need to sort this out with our own local community and figure out what's going to work for us in general. But the reality of it is, at the end of the day, no matter what the solution is, regardless of what customer wants are, it has to be aligned with business needs. Now, enough attrition there, and yeah, then you're going to have to make an adjustment. But if there's enough attrition there, which is a concern in terms of when publishers are diverting that much product away from hobby, which is facilitating single sales and events and continuing to keep the game going and marketing the game and having people come in and do demo days and to continue to try to build that community, it's at the risk of more and more of those stores falling off. While my store is not the end all be all to everybody in the local area, it's a helpful place to be able to come to discover these games and play those games. And if every single community was insular and you didn't have exterior play, like a play space at a local game store or several local game stores in an area, I don't think those games would last for very long. Now, we'll see. Some of the recent changes in some of the collectible card games, they have stopped distribution in some ways and they've pulled their support back from retail a little bit, and we'll see how that works out for them. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure any community can stand on its own without the support of local game stores to be able to host events, but we shall see how that goes. Market jitters. Spider-Man came out and it's the worst thing that's ever happened to Magic. I cannot believe it. The prices are so low. The set is very insular in that it plays really well with itself, but it doesn't do a lot of things exterior, and it's the end of the world. And I think I saw more of that conversation from my retail peers than I saw of the customers, though there's certain customers that want to have inside baseball conversations about those sort of things. And what I found about this industry a lot of times is you sort of reap what you sow in terms of what you say and your actions and how you do it. If you have a store that continues to pang and talk about how shitty standard Magic is, you probably will not have a Magic community, because no customer wants to come in and play standard in a store where there's people behind the counter that are berating how terrible the standard format is or going on and on about it. Well, the same can be said about a product. It's very, very easy for me to not sell any product that I want to pretend that I'm going to stock and say that the product is shit and go from there. The reality of it is, I think there's a lot of different factors that came into play for why Spider-Man is performing the way that it is. And there's tons of people out there that can sort of speculate that. And I don't have enough of the internal knobs and the internal measurement systems to be able to say precisely what it is. As a retailer, just looking at it specifically and comparing it to other offers they've had, there's no serialized cards and there's no commander decks. I think no matter what you're doing in terms of Magic sets and stuff like that going forward, those are two things that the customer base has gotten themselves fairly aligned with, having that sort of expectation. And when you don't have that expectation and there's certain players that come to buy those products, you're going to see some sort of a pullback from that. As somebody that's a Spider-Man fan myself, if I were to compare Final Fantasy and how they did with the Final Fantasy set to Spider-Man, I can tell that the team, the designers, had an immense amount of reverence for the Final Fantasy IP. I could feel that in the cards and the characters and those sort of things. While I could see some of that inside of this Spider-Man set, it did not feel like it had the same amount of oomph to it. And that's just me looking at it personally from my take, knowing the Spider-Man universe pretty well, knowing those characters pretty well, looking at those cards and thinking that there's a very big difference to me, at least in terms of the design and development matching that IP to this IP. So when I look at Spider-Man and I look at some of the numbers and things like that, I guess there's an amount of concern that's there, because we're back to selling Spider-Man below MSRP, because that's what the market says. So we have adjusted down a little bit. Now people are selling it below MSRP, and part of the reason why is because the market demand isn't there for it. So we're not making MSRP anymore on this product. And to exacerbate that a little bit, we've been on a really good run with Magic lately, where people are accustomed to it selling out really fast, making at least MSRP or better. So that now this situation comes in where it's a little bit slippery, and you're seeing this sort of retraction a little bit, and people don't know what to do. Well, for years and years and years and years, I built my business and survived on making 20 to 25% on Magic before. The fact that we're making more than that now means that I'm allowed to do other things inside of the business, be able to hire more people, be able to pay people better, be able to have better fixtures, better displays, more events, look at expansion. Right now we're in the position where we're negotiating a lease for some more space. Now, 29,000 square feet, that's a big store. We're looking at having some more space because there are nights of the week where we don't have enough room in our play space. So we need to be able to address that. So some of the money that we're making this year, in addition to the normal amount of money that we need to run the business, gets put away, because then we reinvest in the business, to reinvest in the customers, to make it a better play experience for everybody, to continue to move the ball forward. Looking forward at exciting new releases. So we've been doing really well locally with Cookie Run. It was not a game that I expected to do anything with. It sort of came out of nowhere for us. We got some of the decks in, we played the game. It's got a really nice tempo feel to it. If you're a CCG player and you sort of swore off it because the IP doesn't look like it's your thing or that sort of thing, I would take a look at the gameplay a little bit. If you're a fan of tempo and you want tempo to be sort of the top most important thing about a card game, Cookie Run is about as tempo driven as you could possibly see a game. Now, I bring that up because the next set's coming out in a week or two. They are quickly moving the American consumer market for the game to catch up with the Korean market. So they're combining smaller sets together to make larger sets and releasing them in this market. Now, this set, the two sets that are smashed together, which are essentially sets 3 and 4, are the highest selling sets in Korea since the inception of the game. There's a whole ton of characters and a ton of cookies in there that people are really familiar with. They're popular characters. It definitely increases the power level. The card frames are a little bit more modern. They do a nicer job as far as the artwork goes. It has a bunch more bells and whistles on it in terms of keywords and playing the game. It adds a lot more robust deck building options as well. So we're excited for that to come out. The folks from Cookie Run are going to come into the store in a couple of weeks. They're going to be here, and actually we'll end up doing a conversation in the studio with them. They're going to take a look at how set 1 goes for them. I'm actually going to New York Comic-Con to have a meeting with them in it's actually about a week from today. I'll be sitting down and talking with them. So that's a really exciting sort of a new thing. So if you're a game store owner and you're looking at stuff and you're like, I have the challenge of sort of dealing with all these allocation issues, and pricing is high, and I can't do singles, and I can't run events because I can't get product support for things like that. One of the things that we always look at doing is how much wider can I go in terms of my offers? And if you look at Cookie Run and you were to compare the cost of the box to what the market price is, it's in a really nice spot. It's in a healthy spot for a collectible card game in its first set. I think that it opens yourself up to a wider range of TCG players, and that it's not the most complex CCG on the market, so it's very, very easy to teach. The cookies are super, super cute. So it may be that you've got a base of customers out there that don't feel like they have a home in the TCG space for whatever reason. This is a pretty good option for it. Right now, it's currently only being carried by ACD. Give them a call, order product. They'll be able to set you up. They've got demo decks and things like that if you just want to try the thing out. The next thing on the docket is Riftbound. We got a nice mural installed from them. The date on it is Halloween. This will come out on Halloween. Now, it's done really well in China. The first couple of big tournaments have gone on over there. It's funny to watch a game with such broad market appeal have their first tournament, and then watching the community scream and holler about there's no meta for this game. Kaisa's the best champion. Where the game's broken, there's not going to be anybody there. And like, what's neat about that is it's, the infancy of, there's a ton of people that are playing card games right now, but there's also a ton of people that are brand new to card games, which I think, interestingly enough, is another reason why we're seeing the market conversations that we're seeing, because it's interesting to me when I go into some of the groups and I read some of the things that people have to say about stores and what they're charging. Oddly enough, there's a number of consumers and stuff like that that rant that I had in the beginning of this episode that are actually going in and they're having that conversation with people. Now, there's plenty of them that want to just dogpile and scream and say that people that sell above MSRP are just the worst people on the planet, which is fine. Again, this isn't insulin. We're not selling gasoline or pharmaceuticals or chicken. Like, this is just entertainment. But the number of people that are coming into those conversations and having a more educated take because they understand the process more and they understand the economics of the business, that has been encouraging, which it makes sense. There's more people that are playing. There's more people that sort of understand the business mechanisms when it comes to those sort of things. So there's a lot more advocates out there, which, they jump into those conversations at their own peril because they get dogpiled on by everybody that just wants things a certain way. So when we look at a thing like Riftbound, the second event went off in China, and then there was a completely different meta, and then the third event went off and there was a completely different meta. So like, it's nice to see that the folks at Riot and the folks at UVS and that team over there have developed a nice spread of cards and decks and different things to be able to play with and interact with. I know that from the retail side of things, a couple of months out, there was a real concern for product, how much supply is going to be there. I think the concerns were certainly genuine. I was somebody that was concerned about it as well. I think when the game launches, when the game does come out and we do get our first shipment from distribution, a lot of us are going to be disappointed with regard to how much supply is there, certainly less than what we thought it was going to be. So we might see this giant market price spike as well for this game, and it might end up being a situation where not as many people want to come to the game because they don't want to deal with another game that's dealing with some supply issues. I had the pleasure of being able to go out to LA to the Riot campus with a number of retailers from around the world, actually. It was an international retailer symposium where UVS and Riot Games talked to us, and I talked about it on a previous video. And one of the things that the UVS team was really forward about having the conversation with us about was with regard to supply. This set is going to continue to be printed to be able to meet the demands of what the customers need. And one of the things that they talked about for this set is it's as close to a core set for the game as they're going to have. They started spoiling some of the pictures for some of the second set. It looks like they're going to go down the route of a traditional card game in that the sets are going to be themed around the lore for the world, and you're going to see different keywords and different abilities and stuff like that come into play. But this first set is going to be a core set that they're just going to continue to print as long as there's demand. My expectation is, it's possible that some of this release stock is going to be short for a period of time. I feel pretty confident that there's going to be more and more supply that's going to come in. So it may start out up here, but I think it's going to come down to something that's a really manageable level in terms of pricing and be more standardized than what we're seeing with these giant spikes that we're dealing with, especially like the two biggest card games right now that we're dealing with that stuff for is by far Pokemon and Gundam. The Bandai stuff is fairly standard, and Pokemon's just on this wild, the COVID Pokemon thing. Like, I don't get it. I don't know why there's that many people that are buying this much and they're this rabid about this. The sets are good, the cards are good, that sort of thing, but like the buying is well outpacing what the play is. So at some point there will be a market correction there, and the sad part about it is we won't know until 100% supply shows up for one set and we're like, what happened? And the bottom falls out of it, and we'll lose tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars when that happens. So what I would say is, if you're a player out there and you're concerned about where supply's at and that sort of thing, and will you have enough to be able to play the game, I would say before you decide to go into a group with torches and pitchforks and start screaming about that thing, it's something that UVS is well aware of. It's something that Riot is well aware of. I have the utmost confidence that they're going to continue to make products so that the market on the boxes and stuff, despite what they do on the opening day, are going to be able to solve itself in a much more rapid way than what we see in some of these other cases where we're just not seeing that sort of thing, whether it's Fabled, Lorcana. The most recent Flesh and Blood sets have had some challenges with supply as well, but that's sort of due to the nature of the fact that there's that many more people that are playing those games as well. So I'd say the same thing to my retail peers out there as well. If what you're seeing from distribution is not making you happy when it comes to that game, what I would encourage you to do is obviously make sure that you have orders with everybody, but make sure that you look at what you're ordering and keep those orders in place for back orders or for pre-orders or reorders or that sort of thing, because more boxes are on their way. The game looks good. It's going to be wildly successful, despite maybe some of the supply hiccups that we might see that are being corrected faster than anything that I've ever seen in my life. They announced their first big event, which is in Houston the first week of December. I've already booked my tickets to go down there. Part of it is I'm excited and enthusiastic for the game. Part of it is I want to see what Riot's going to do. I want to see what the event looks like. You know, MagicCon last weekend was a real spectacle and something that really, you know, was awe-inspiring for what you can do inside of that sort of space when it comes to a card game that's really doing well. SWU had a really nice Worlds as well, so it's going to be interesting for me, and I need to see what Riot and UVS is going to do with this thing. So I'm definitely going to be in Houston, so feel free to come by and take a selfie and call me a scalper. That'll be fine. I'm okay with that. I've got wide shoulders. I can certainly take it. And I think I'm going to end on that for today. So sort of the big takeaway is when I'm getting 85% less than what I think that I need in order to survive for my business, then there's a bunch of business decisions that I need to make. So I can sell that 15% at market price and I can not make those profits. But if I don't make those profits for the fact that I don't have product on my shelf for the next 89 days, it doesn't help my business in any way. And there's no way to really manage those costs and that loss. So market pricing is the way that we're going to continue doing it. If it upsets some people, that's okay. I promise you, as much as you're upset at me and my pricing, I'm just as upset about the fact that I can't get the product to sell you at a lower price. So with that, I'll wrap it up, and great to see everybody again. Happy gaming.